learn to improve conversions and generate more leads with the video podcast at marketingoptimization.tv. Hi, and welcome to Marketing Optimization with Alex Designs. I'm your host, Alex Harris, and today we have Barry Feldman. How you doing, Barry?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me here, Alex.
Thanks for being on. You've been doing content marketing at feldmancreative.com for a while now. To get started, I want to ask, what is your definition of optimization and why is it beneficial?
Well, to pull from word science, I guess optimization is simply the process of making something more effective, make it work better, make it more beneficial. In the context of online marketing, we're often talking about search engine optimization. It's kind of a funny term, but of course we mean increasing the chances of getting found online. And the new conversation, or at least the conversation that people are paying attention to as they practice, the various tenets of online marketing, clearly is about conversion optimization or conversion rate optimization. So there, I think it should be understood that we're talking about a metric that defines what a conversion is, and the process of improving it, making the numbers bigger and more attractive. And then comes what's beneficial about it is there's a connection between those numbers and the process that you use to improve those numbers and the growth of your business, or at least the number of leads you collect. That's why we do this, right? We're marketers. Optimizing the process is about increasing the amount of leads we get.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've been named a top digital strategist and content marketer on the web. And one of the elements that you do is you create these great infographics. And one of the ones that we're going to talk about quickly includes the 11 leading website conversion killers. Why don't you give us just a couple, maybe 2 or 3 of the conversion killers you talk about in that infographic?
All right, yeah, you're right about that. I'm doing infographics and really enjoying. I did one. I usually do it in partnership with somebody who also wants to do an infographic and is a designer. And I just did one called the Complete A to Z Guide to Personal Branding. And oh my God, it's by 100 miles the most viewed and shared piece of content I've ever created. So lesson here is make infographics. People like them, and they certainly are prone to sharing them. The one you're talking about was started off as an idea for a post. And, I'm a guest blogger here, there, and just about everywhere. And so this was indeed a post. It was on Convince and Convert, Jay Baer's great website and blog. And I wrote, I think it was 11. I might have changed the number. It probably was 11. And they were my tips, largely from psychology and copywriting point of view, about what kills the conversions. And then when it came time to make an infographic out of that, my partner in crime, the guy that did the design and illustration, we developed a metaphor, which is bug killing. So it's a fun infographic to look at, and it features a big ant spray bottle. So let's see, you said pick a few and turn those into tips for the sake of this conversation. Okay, the first one's conversion aversion. People come to me all the time, invariably, even if I'm not being contacted to improve their website, the conversation leads to that. But at least 50% of the time I am being contacted to improve their website. And I feel the ambiguous complaints or so-called definitions of the problem, which are, my website's not working. And I go, okay, what would it be doing when it does work? It's not. I'm not happy to report this to you, but that's a hard question that they can't answer. The mic goes, or the telephone goes blank and silent. And so conversion aversion, I guess, is a fear or maybe even a neglect or maybe even an ignorance of defining what conversion is. So if you tell me your website's not working, you should expect me to ask you what working means. And it's not a complicated question. You might be trying to put butts in seats for an event. You might be trying to collect emails, to keep in touch with people. You might be trying to get people to see or try or buy your product. All of those are definitions of conversion, and they differ from site to site based on the objective of the marketer or even the campaign. However, in my mind, there's very few definitions of conversion that really don't involve finding out who came to your website. So if you just start there, who came to your website, right? If it's a store and they came to your store and you didn't find out who they are, that means they didn't buy anything.
Right, exactly.
Who came to your website? So don't be adverse to defining conversions. Start there. Let's see here. I'll scroll through my infographic. Um, Number 6, so I've jumped forward from 1 to 6, is no help. So you see websites of marketers who haven't got to the content marketing era yet. And so the first thing they want to present to you is a why to buy proposition. And that's called selling, and the mentality today online with so much blogging and content like infographics is we're trying to help, not hype people. At least that's the strategy of content marketing. And I thank Jay Baer for consolidating that into that, easy sentence, or those two ideas, help and hype. And so a lot of websites simply don't offer help. And you and I have been doing this for a while now, and more common to the content marketer is going to be the offering of a blog, which is generally information about how to do your job better if it's a business-to-business blog, or how to have a better life in one way or another if it's a consumer blog, and ebooks like that, and podcasts like that, and interviews like that, and so forth. So yeah, I think if you look at your website now and you're having conversion problems, perhaps you're too salesy. It's sort of a common axiom that people don't like to be sold to, but they love to buy. So you can be helpful by teaching them how to buy. And then number 11, I pull here. I think this is super prevalent to content marketers and online marketers. Number 11 says no direction. You build a website. Um, it winds up looking like the directory at the bottom of the escalator at a massive department store. It's like we couldn't decide. We don't know what you want. We don't know what we want you to want or where we want you to go. So here's everything we could think of gathered on the home page. Good luck. Have a good little tour of our store. So today, I think the best converting websites are super simplified and give the person direction. If you're looking for this, do this. If you're here for the first time, click here. This is the logical place to start your journey.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you brought up a lot of great things that I want to touch upon. And in particular, you tell a lot of people how to create great content, then share it, and then potentially put together an email series as well and use content marketing through emails. Really, a whole bunch of different touch points to improve that relationship. What would you tell site owners or give them some tips when they do create content to get them to respond and convert?
Broad question you got there. You brought up email, so I'm gonna run with that. I see a problem, and I'm on a bit of a campaign to convert my clients into email marketers. Point blank, no questions asked. It's not optional, because I've seen all too often people pushing some of the buttons they know they need to push and then stopping before they've finished the complete process. And so people are collecting email addresses. They might be doing a good job offering ebooks, say, for instance, and the website's well designed and it makes it very clear on the homepage and at various touch points throughout, like at the bottom of a post, that you should have this ebook, and you can't have it unless we find out what your email is. So, you're collecting those. Quickly going to become thousands if you're getting traffic to your website. What are you going to do with those? The answer has to be nurture those leads. It's kind of old school to assume people are going to subscribe to your blog. They might, but I guess what I mean by old school is the sort of demise of RSS. So even that, if you understand and agree that most people are not wise to RSS, or it's not going that well, the subscriptions that they sign up for are email based. And so you need to stay in touch and keep in front of them. And so email becomes another form of content marketing, and I think you continue to soft sell, but it is understood now we're talking about permission-based marketing. We're not being pushy in email if we mention that we have a product or service to sell. And so while I think you're going to find a lot less people opting out of your email if it contains helpful information. You might be telling them we have new material for you to see. You might be curating content and saying, I saw this great thing and I'd like you to see it too if you'd like to learn about, X or Y or Z. But then comes, hey, let's come on back to my website. That's what the email's for, really, when you get right down to it. Come on back to my website because, and fill in that blank. And that that because it is going to depend a lot on what product or service you sell. But I think there is the place where you can go from helping to hyping, or at least you can inject the idea that it's time to do business.
Yep. Well, as marketers or website owners, we collect these emails, and people kind of gone in the direction of doing that. Now you've collected the email, and you actually want to send out maybe your first or second blast for that new group. What are some of the suggestions that you're giving your clients to improve their email marketing campaigns?
Well, interestingly, I had a conversation much like this yesterday with Hunter Boyle of
Aweber.
Aweber. Yeah, so there's few that know more about email marketing than him. And though the interview itself was about a different topic, it started with a conversation we had at the Conversion Conference in San Francisco, which was about culling your email list. And so, to your question, I think if you've sort of incubated your list for a while, you've collected a number of emails and then waited to finally say hello, here's our new e-newsletter, you'd probably want to give people the option to opt out. And so ultimately what you're talking about is making a list smaller. And if you're talking about a list of 1,000 and you say, hey, we want you to raise your hand if you want to be on our list, don't be surprised if that's less than 50%. Hard to predict, and it depends a lot on how you execute the strategy. But ultimately, you're probably going to wind up with 40 or 50% of those people ignoring those emails or doing nothing about them. But that first email, I think, particularly if a fair share of time's gone by, should say, hey, we have an email. The email should say why we do it and why we're sending it to you. In this series, you can expect to learn X, Y, and Z, or get updates about content we produce, or get updates about events we host, or learn more about this particular topic. And so you're really selling the email. The email is the product at that point. And then you're saying, click here if you want to be a part of that. And so ultimately, though the quantity may shrink of people that are on your email list, the quality hopefully will grow. And so you're practicing permission-based marketing. You're talking to people that want to hear from you, and that's an important part of conversion, right? If I have an email list, and I'm getting around now to doing that, and imparting is such sweet sorrow. My email list is approaching 5,000 people. And I have high open rates. I have about 25 to 35% open rates, but that means about 3,000 or more people are not opening it. So should I continue to send them email? In email services, you pay per quantity, and so it's actually a good idea to watch your budget and actually your the allocation of your resources and your time by culling your list and talking to people that actually want to receive your content.
Yeah. Well, because people do sit on their list for a while, and then all of a sudden they have this great idea and they want to send it out, and it will hurt you if you don't figure out that strategy properly. So when you're doing the unsubscribe, do you kind of put that in the first or second line? If you don't want this, just click unsubscribe, or you just kind of tailor it to, just put the unsubscribe in the header or the footer? Any details about positioning your unsubscribe email?
Well, let's say we've moved past the first one. It should be understood, I think, with most people that get a lot of email from brands, that unsubscribe is in relatively small type at the bottom of the page. You'll probably annually point or go out of your way to call more attention to the idea that you don't have to get this email, and that's called unsubscribe, and that button's right here. So what I was talking about was that email that sort of reintroduces yourself to the company, or the company's reintroducing themselves to the recipient of the email via email, because the assumption is they probably haven't been hanging out at their website. And so I think there you would make it more prominent, but you'd want to consult with somebody that's helping you create the email, because you could make it, it's called a double opt-in, I guess. If you've opted in before and now we're asking you to do it again. So you can make it so any sort of click does indeed indicate you're opting in, or you can make it so, what's more prominent is the option to opt out. You could say that doing nothing as a result of receiving your email either means you're in or you're out. Probably means you're out. But that's a tough one, because people get a lot of email, and it's hard to say if you've done it everything right the first time in terms of timing. So there's a mystery, and even the analytics for email, while they're extremely helpful, there's a lot of estimating going on in the analytics of email, and most email analytics or companies will admit as much. And so you probably want to do that more than once before you give up on somebody and decide that they should opt out. But yeah, I don't think that the purpose of an email is like, hey, here's a giant button that says don't get my email. But that first email that is of a list, it's from a list that's incubated for a while, should, you know, pretty obviously and fairly say, you have two choices. One is to get this email, and the other is to not, and make it real honest and above board.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to mention about the unsubscribes and ensuring people actually want your content, because if they don't and they mark it as spam, that's even worse. And, with anything in conversions, you really want to figure out who you're talking to and provide more value to them, because if they don't want to be on your list anyway, then you're never going to convert them. But figuring out how to, make your content a lot better is what I want to jump into next. So now you're on the site and you're developing these infographics or these great blog posts. What would you tell to, content marketers that, really want to get it shared, and a lot of people talk about storytelling. What are some tips to create great stories through your blog posts?
Oh, all right. Now we're getting into my sweet spot. At least I like to think so. I think a lot of brands that are coming to the content marketing age are, that they're getting schooled in blogging, or they're not, and they begin blogging with this idea that I am now going to put on my journalism hat. And they apply what they've learned, just through life lessons and absorbed about what journalism is. And, journalism historically, this doesn't apply to every form of journalism or every publication, but it's been generally objective. If you trust a journalist to report to you the news, it's because those are the facts. And so, while a reporter might have some storytelling skills, I think if you do that in your blog, you're going to blend in with the crowd and be ignored. And so, storytelling first is having a point of view. And so, I think if you believe in something, or want to argue some sort of thing that you believe to be a common myth or a fallacy, that's a point of view. And so I encourage bloggers to not be so journalistic and so objective, and actually be subjective and say, this is what I think. You might polarize people, and that scares marketers, but that's good. I like to say, um, people either remember you or forget you. They're either with you or they're not. And so you're looking for that, just like you're looking, like when we talked about email, you're looking for people that say, yes, market to me. When you're writing content for your website, largely a blog, you're looking for people that are turned on, by the things you say. So when you write something, you can turn people on or off, and that's a good thing. So then comes storytelling. The temptation is always there to make every post a how-to, and abide by formulas like a list, like the list we've been talking about, 11 website conversion killers. Well, I'm certainly not going to, do that and then contradict myself and say don't do that. But that's not a story, and I think to some extent, almost everything you write should have a degree of storytelling. And so, then you go back to fiction, really. Now forget about journalism for a second. How do you tell a story? Well, you set a time and a place. You introduce characters. In marketing, those characters are often the market or the customers or even yourself. And then you introduce a conflict. What was the problem? What happened? And then you tell the story. How was that? How did that journey go? And largely, there's a resolution. And so, it's not a formula that you can apply to everything you write, but these are the elements of a story that you should think about. And I think, characters are first and foremost. If you're reporting, if you're talking about advice, I think point of view is first and foremost. If you're trying to tell a story or merge the two, characters come first, because characters are humans usually, and in humans are stories, and that's what touches our hot buttons. When we empathize, you could hook electrodes up to people and study them, and we have for decades now. And when you tell a story about somebody's pleasures and pains, the viewer vicariously experiences it.
Yeah. Well, having that transparency or vulnerability come through in your stories is how you get people to kind of relate to you and potentially do business with you, and engage with you to kind of return later. I've really seen that in my own web design, because what I know that you've been a creative director for a while, so I want to ask you a couple of creative director, art director type of questions. What I feel in order to become a more creative person is to actually become a better storyteller, whether it's through design or writing. What do you tell people who want to become art directors or creative directors? Do you tell them that writing is a part of that? Because I've seen the best art directors are actually the best writers.
You think so?
I think so.
Well, I would say the best art directors have a large respect for writing, So when you see the hacks of the world or newbies or amateurs, they think they're creating art pieces to go on the wall of a gallery, and it's a horrible approach to marketing. And so, however much you might love the illustration or the layout or the photography or the topography, people are largely consuming that content to learn. And so that's going to happen through copy, what they read. And so you have to have a sizable respect as a designer, art director, whatever you decide to call it now, for the story being told and presenting those words. Your job is to get out of the way, right? I'm sure as a designer that the best designs are invisible, right? You didn't, as a writer, you don't get people to think about writing, and as a designer, you're trying not to get people to think about design, right? And usually Steve Jobs stories come to mind. We stick this new device in your hand, and there's one button, and you push it. Well, that's a good design, call it, minimalism or simplicity or whatever you want. But, good design gets out of the way and, moves along the functionality. And so, yeah, I think while I don't know that the best designers are writers and vice versa, I guess where I would agree with you there is the best designers think about the objective, which is to get the content consumed, and therefore have a healthy respect for what's been written, and vice versa. All that said, I'm not so foolish as to think that design doesn't play into it. And so I try to think pictorially, and so yeah, these two things go hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard for me to write a blog post without adding a whole bunch of pictures or stylized text to it. I always want
that doesn't make it bad, but you'll the audience will dictate if you overdid it or not. And
Yeah.
so yeah, you asked about getting people started. I think there's who was it? I guess maybe it was Einstein that says keep subtracting things until it's simple enough, but don't subtract anymore. I'm misquoting him,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, if you're new to design and copywriting too, you've included too many ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Two more questions. So now we have a content marketing and strategy in place. We're collecting emails, writing great blog posts. Maybe we're on a decent schedule, posting once or twice a week. What would you say to kind of more of the medium to advanced level content marketer to really take their presence to the next level?
All right. Well, a lesson that I give a lot, and I hope this would be considered intermediate advanced, is that you're thinking a little too locally in the first 6 months to a year, while you have to begin at home, on owned property, as they say, as opposed to, when I talk about that, the conversation is often about how we're putting too much effort into having our content on blogger.com or on Facebook or what have you, and therefore things change over there. So yeah, your home on the web, your hub, so to speak, is your website and your blog, and you have to build that out first and foremost. But then comes the expansion of your digital footprint, which is SEO, which is authority building, which is influence, which is trust, all the things that make you reputable and ultimately trustable. You've talked about some of these themes, and I'm not sure we've got to trust yet, but this idea that you discovered us through search, you read our website, you gave us your email, now we're communicating via email, you know what's going on with our company, you're getting updated on when we have new contact, new partnerships, new products, what have you. what's next, I say, is the expansion of your digital footprint. And the reason you mentioned at the very beginning of the interview today that you found me on lists that call me, you know, tops or high or prominent in terms of content marketing influencers and digital strategists and so forth. Well, I didn't do that because I have a great website. I would include having a great website as a large part of that equation, but I really got there by making friends in high places, as self-serving as that sounds. It's called networking. And I practiced influencer marketing, and it's now starting to pay off. And I'm now starting to write about how, you could do that because we're all personal brands now. And so the list of things that I'm working on in this piece I'm working on about influencer marketing is about 50 long, so we won't get into it. But some of the ones that jump right to mind about what I did is I made friends with people who write books, people who are already respected in the marketing circles. I went to conferences and I met them. I shook their hand, I exchanged business cards, I asked them how I can help them. Ultimately, the number one thing I did for them in terms of getting them to know who I am now is I wrote for them. I'm a prolific guest blogger, and I write for Copy Blogger, Convince and Convert, Marketing Prof, Social Media Today, Social Media Examiner, Social Media Explorer. I was going to say don't get me started, but I got myself started there. But that's expanding my digital footprint. You can discover Feldman Creative a lot of places. This infographic that we're talking about, who knows where you found it? The one I was talking about, the A to Z Guide to Personal Branding. If you do a search for that, I think the first 3 or 4 pages of your Google SERPs right now are going to be that and that alone. No misunderstanding with other content. And so I advise people to follow me here with this idea of expanding your digital footprint, and that's a long story too. You could focus first on the places where there's no friction. Nobody can tell you you can't be here. YouTube, SlideShare, Listly, Visually, a place where they collect infographics. So nobody kicks you out of those places. And it doesn't take a reputation or even quality to get on those. So that's an obvious way to expand your digital footprint. But then comes the communities that are indeed managed by professionals, particularly like Copy Blogger, for example. Publishes once or twice a day, so you don't have carte blanche to walk in there and go, here's my content, publish it. They have to approve of it, and then there's a fairly long queue, so it's in demand. And so I think of this idea of guest blogging or expanding your digital footprint at large as a ladder, and you got to start somewhere. And this does not minimize the quality or prominence or importance of SlideShare, but SlideShare is a great first step. It's very easy to take any content you have and convert it into a slideshow. And also accepted there are infographics and videos and even PDFs. But go there. They have a huge audience. So you're thinking, if you're following my strategy here, you're thinking about expanding your audience. And if you take it strictly from an SEO point of view, you're thinking about backlinks. But a little too technical for my taste and a little too SEO for my taste. The idea is you should be thinking about being discovered and increasing your influence and trust, and you do that by increasing your digital footprint. So I think that's the level of that comes next, to be preceded by having an awesome blog. Because when you do apply to some website that has way more traffic than your own, there may or may not be a process, but however that unfolds, the questions you're going to answer are, what do you write about? Can I see some? Who's your audience now? And so your website has to answer that question. You have to, you can't write one post and then go searching to write for the New York Times or Mashable or whoever you deem to be the top of that ladder. You have to seed your website with a lot of great content and then go and try to pitch it. There's most sites now are publishers. Most marketers consider themselves publishers. So you're not really pitching yourself like public relations people might, where there's a lot of resistance. The people that are publishers need content, and if you're offering it to them for free, that's a pretty good door opener.
Yeah. Well, I love it because you talked on some of the core things that most people miss. They think they're just going to create a website and all of a sudden, magically, these people are just going to start showing up and giving them money or whatever you're trying to do, whatever cause you're trying to really affect. It's really comes down to building relationships, creating an online presence, and then a lot of effort. Going and finding meeting people, whether it's online or offline, and really creating those relationships so you can get leverage and continue up that ladder each time. If you wrote for a guest blog for one, use that as leverage for your next one. If you created a video about a topic, use it as a way to potentially get clients. If you wrote a great article or interview other podcasters, use that as leverage to get your next best guest. It's that leverage, that ladder that you keep on climbing to continuously and put a lot of effort into making your content a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds devious, I guess. Where I think you're going with that is it's extremely helpful to make each one a stepping stone in the expansion of your network, and so you and I now know each other, and if you're looking for guests on future shows, I'd be a good resource for you, and the network grows, and then, people come to know what you do and hopefully respect it and hopefully send business your way or opportunities your way, even if they're not financial ones. So yeah, that's a big part of it, but yes, it begins at home with having a great content to begin with, because ultimately you're going to be you're going to be marketing the content, basically what it comes down to. So yeah, there is this common misperception that maybe they read some information from HubSpot or the HubSpot book and they go, okay, for me to excel in inbound marketing, I need a big website that grows every day or every week, and therefore I'll have increased discoverability on Google. Well, that's a long, slow road. I'm not going to tell you that it's not going to help. That's definitely good advice. But marketing your marketing is the accelerator. And so, yeah, some people might tell you spend 20% of your time creating content and 80% of your time promoting it. I think that's a little extreme, and I guess it's a matter of how much resources are available to you. But the point should be taken, and that is that you don't just build it and then move on to the next piece. You have a strategy in place for promoting it, and certainly, that begins with social media.
Yeah, which is a whole nother topic in itself.
Yeah. Why did I say that?
Awesome. Well, let's close by telling people how they can find out more about you and share your Twitter as well.
All right. Twitter's easy, @Feldman Creative, and that's my website too. So feldmancreative.com. There's not too many places you can find me. I have an about.me page, which is sort of a directory to all things. And on my website are the chiclets that make it so you'll find me on all the social media. I'm very active on Twitter. I think all bloggers are, and I love Twitter. And I'm getting increasingly active on G+, and I've become a publisher on LinkedIn. And then on my website, because I've talked about the many places I blog, in addition to finding my blog up in the nav bar, when you mouse over blog, you'll see a directory I've made for people where they can find my authorship page, where other publishers catalog stuff by author. And so if you're looking for, what is Barry written at HubSpot or Social Media Today or what have you, there's links there. So yeah, start at feldmancreative.com and feel free to connect.
Awesome, Barry. Thanks a lot for your time.
All right. Thanks, Alex. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for watching the Marketing Optimization Podcast with Alex Designs. Please remember to subscribe to all of the videos in my YouTube channel. Thank you.